is Daniel Foley Carter, and in this video I'm going to give you a very basic explanation of what Google Search Console is. So first of all, just to give a little bit of context, Google Search Console is a free product from Google that allows you to understand some fundamentals of the website's organic traffic profile, as well as some indexing statistics and some configurations and areas for things like messaging. So I'm going to do a basic run through in this video. I will do more advanced videos that will delve a little bit more into specific areas of functionality. So liken this to a video for someone that is maybe very new to SEO. So when you log into Google Search Console, you're going to have your navigation menu in here. And initially, you're going to spend a majority of your time in the performance section. So if we click on the performance section, and what you're going to see here, and obviously this video was recorded in 2024, Google has been making changes to the interface for the first time in many years, so it may change by the time that you watch this video. But fundamentally, the functionality should stay the same. So here, we've got the ability to select a date, and we've also got the ability to compare. We're also able to look at traffic from different sources, whether it's just from general search, whether it's from image, video, or news. And we have the ability here to apply some filters. This allows us to maybe drill down and inspect traffic to a specific page, or if you want to look at how a specific set of queries are doing, we'll be able to do it here. Over here, you will have the ability to export the data that you have on screen. So you can export to an array of different formats, and we'll run through those. When your data was last updated, now Google Search Console data is slightly behind. Obviously, Google collects the data. That data is then added to your account. So you can see that today is the 30th. The latest data is the 28th. So moving down, the first thing that you're going to see, other than the chart, which I'll just show you, this is interactive. So you can click it and you can select. And this will just allow you to look at figures in isolation. So we can see the volume of clicks that our website received. And here we can see impressions that we've received by date. And we can see dates. And what's important to know is that when you apply a single filter, you'll see that there is a axis on, there's a set of data on the axis here. And if you apply a second filter, it will appear on the opposite axis. Now, if you apply more than two filters at once, you will notice that they disappear. So just to keep that in mind, some people have asked me, Dan, I'm in Search Console, there's no axes there, I can't see. Well, that's because it only supports two axes at any one time. So coming down to here, you will have your queries, and you can see here we have a queries table, and it will show you the query and how many clicks that you had in the time frame that is selected. So you'll note if you change your time frame, the volume of clicks that you have will change. Now, what's also important to know is that if you select each one of these, it will also appear in the table. So if we select all of them, we can see here the other columns. So just to explain, so top queries, basically top queries is a bit misleading. Top queries is referring to the first 1,000 queries for a domain. As I will teach you, there is a lot more data generally than what you see. And I will explain all the reasons behind that and how you can get access to more data. But you see here, so we have our top queries data. We have how many clicks that query generated for our time frame set. So our website, bulkco.co.uk, had 468 clicks for bulk buy food over the last 12 months. Now, again, that number is true, but it's also not true. And I will also explain that as we go through these series of videos. How many times it basically appeared in view. So an impression is basically if someone came to Google and they search for bulk buy food and our website appears, so the user has seen it but not clicked on it. So basically, for the 8,929 times that we appeared for bulk buy food, 468 people clicked it. And that's where this number comes from. So CTR stands for click-through rate. And basically, it's the percentage of people that actually clicked versus the percentage of people versus the volume of people that actually saw the result. So obviously, the higher a click-through rate is, the better. So again, each element of this will have its own video, but to give you a rough indicator, if the queries that you see here are related to your brand, so let's say the brand was called Bulk Co. Typically, when you see branded queries, you will see a much higher click-through rate. And that's because if someone searches for the brand, the probability is that they're going to click on the website is much higher. So typically, click-through rate for anything to do with your brand misspellings is generally going to be a lot higher. But typically, a CTR that I would say needs improvement is anything generally between 1% and 2%. Anything very poor is below 1%. Anything sort of 3-4% onwards is acceptable, and 5% onwards you're heading into positive territory there. But again, if you can get CTR higher, the better, because you get more clicks. And this is the position. Now, again, we have to be very careful with how we look at this, because the position here for bulk buy food says position 7.8. Now, because we haven't applied any filters, this is position 7.8 as an average. So, for example, in our time frame, which is 12 months, we could have spent 6 months of the year at position 1 and 6 months of the year at position 10. So our average could be in the middle. Our average position could be 5. So this is not the position that you rank for now. This is just the averaged position. So you might say, well, why would you have an average position? Well, it needs that because obviously if you're looking at a time frame, it has to report on where that average is over that time frame. So this is an average position, and there are lots of nuances to how we can use this data, and I will go through this in more detail. But to give you maybe a little nugget of insight, when we look at this data, so when we're looking at our website traffic, we haven't applied any filters. This is just traffic from around the world. So I could have had clicks from America, Australia, India, China. So if our website is a UK website and we sell products in the UK market, then really we care about people that are in the UK that can buy our products. So this average position, is based on the world. So one of the things that that we can do is we can click on Add Filter, and we can start narrowing down. So we can say, okay, we can click on country. We can click on the country that is most relevant to us, and then we can see, our positions change. Now we have to obviously realize that the query ordering might change. But we can see here now we're looking specifically at the United Kingdom. Now, one of the other things you might do is if you want to get a bit more of a accurate idea of where you are now, you can change to a shorter time frame. And if we look at bulk buy food, we can actually see that we are lower. We are position 10. So short time frame with a specific filter allows us to get a bit more of a better idea of where we are. And this explains why, even though Search Console has all of the position data, this is also one of the reasons why people use external rank tracking, because generally it's almost like the data that's been filtered for you. And obviously, you can get an idea of like daily position changes and things like that. And you can sort of do that in Search Console, but we'll come back to that. So we have our queries, we have our clicks, we have our impressions and CTR. So we've explained what these are. So the next thing is that we can actually interact with these. So we can click on it. And then for our time frame, we can see day by day what things look like. So we can see how many clicks we had on a day, how many times we appeared in a search result in that day. We can see the click-through rate, and we can see our position. So we can see here our position has been changing somewhat. Now, generally, whenever you're looking at data, if you're looking at a specific query, for example, you'll want to look generally at a wider view. So what I mean by that is you wouldn't really base any of your decision making on looking at 7 days worth of data or even a month. Generally, you'll want to look at 3 months, 6 months, 12 months onwards. So if we look here, for example, let's just make this a little bit less messy. If we want to see how many clicks we had on a day and what our average position was, we can see that. So we can see, for example, on the 21st of January, we averaged position 5.2 on that day, and we had 4 clicks. And over here, we can see, obviously, over the course of the year, our position came all the way down. So obviously, if our position goes down, we're going to receive less. Now, one other important thing to also note is impressions are important, even though they're not a click. Impressions are important because they can sort of be used as an indicator as to how popular something is in terms of people searching for it. Now, one thing that's also really key to keep in mind as you're learning Search Console and you're learning how to use this is that average position can go down, but the behavior between click change and impression change is generally a little bit different. And let me explain why. So if we're in positions 1 to 3, for example, we're more likely to get a click. So the higher up in the search results we are, the more likely we are to get a click. But obviously, as you may have already used Google, how many people really, click down to position 10? So what tends to happen is that on the position curve, as you come away from position 1, clicks go down. However, impressions don't tend to follow that curve if your position maybe goes from 1 to 5 or 1 to 8 or 3 to 10. As long as you're still on page 1, you're likely to maintain your impressions because you're there appearing, you're just not getting as many clicks because you're lower. And that's why sometimes you might see that the average position goes down, but impressions do not, because we're still appearing in the search, but we're just not in the same position that we would get the clicks. So you might see clicks come down and impressions maintained. So that would explain that. And obviously, naturally, if we're still appearing in the search, but our position goes down, our clicks go down, that means our click-through rate goes down. And as we can see here, now the problem with Search Console, and this is a problem with Search Console that we've solved in a separate tool, is that it only offers a day view. So it's really hard if you're only getting like a click every other day. So it looks fragmented. But if you actually look at this area here, you can see the gaps underneath here are far more prominent than they are here. So we can definitely see that click-through rate here has dropped. Okay. So once we've selected our query, you can see here it's applied as a filter. So Google will then give us all of the data that relates to that query. So if we just go back and emulate this again, and I'll explain. So by default, Search Console opens up and it gives you the data. The only filter there is the time frame. So when we go in and click on something, it's applying this as a filter. So what Google will do now is Google will say, okay, well, I'll give you all of the data for that query. and we can see the clicks, impressions, CTR, and average position. But what you'll notice once we've applied the filter is if we go down, we see our table again, but we see here that it defaults to pages. So what Google is actually showing us is that for this query, here are the pages that have been returned. Now, there are, again, nuances to this, and I will show you. So I'm just going to see if we are appearing in search and if I can show you this as a bit more of an example, or I can show you something else. Okay. So not a great example for bulk buy food. I'm just seeing if I can see. Here we go. Okay, so we've got one. So before I show you something, what this is doing is it's telling us that in the search results for bulk buy food, here are the URLs that have been given to the end user. Now, you'll see here, for example, this homepage has had 549 clicks and 11,000 impressions. But we see these URLs below, and we see only 2 others have clicks. So what does this mean? Does this mean that these URLs have been served alongside this at the same time? Well, no. So there is a tiny little bit of complexity to this. It's not really complex. It's just explaining the scenario. So I'm going to do my best to keep it very simple. There are 2 scenarios here. The first one is that Google has served this URL the most, and that these URLs here weren't served independently. Now, if I explain, imagine our search result for bulk buy food. If you look here, we can see this Best Way Wholesale, and we can see here that it's their homepage. So it's very much like our Bulk Co homepage. But if you look here, you can see that these are site links. So we can see here promotions, depot locator, contact us, and grocery. Now we know that 95% of users are likely to click on this. That's not to say that some people won't click on this, but generally most people are just going to do what they always do and click on the main result. So the first scenario is that Google served our homepage like it did here. And these pages here, over time, because bear in mind this is over 16 months, at various times in the past, we had these little links below. So we might have had food, tinned food, cider, gin. So we might have had some of these served below, which is why we see these URLs here, but they have hardly any clicks, but they still have quite a few thousand impressions. So what's happened is that for a portion of the time that this has been appearing in search, these have too, but we can see here, this only has half the impressions that this does. So there's been periods of time where Google has served just this with no site links. And if we do a check today, we can see here's our homepage, but there's no site links below. Now, the other scenario, and it's one that I can't show you directly here in this data set, but I will be able to show you at some point during these education videos. But the other scenario, and what can sometimes happen, is that Google can serve a URL and then say, do you know what? Actually, this URL is a better match. So what might happen, and if we potentially draw this, I can explain. So let's say we take our box with average position. Okay, and this average position is basically for everything that has been served. But we might have had a point where this page was served for a while. Just bear with me while I put it into Paint. Then we might have this page that was served for a while. Okay. So what can happen is that Google could say, for so much time that, it's served this page because it believes that this page is the most relevant to our search term, bulk buy food. So Google's thinking, bulk buy food. Well, the domain is a bulk food wholesaler. So we'll just send them to the homepage because then they can go to any food category they like. And then one day Google might think, actually, we are better off sending them to the food page. So what can happen is that this page can drop and this page can come in. So if one URL goes and another one comes in, that's basically like a transition. Okay. Now I'm going to use something that if you're new to SEO, you may not understand, or you may have heard of it but don't understand it. But there is another scenario, and it's called cannibalization. Cannibalization is where, let's say, this URL is ranking and the rankings are going up, like they are here. And then cannibalization can also be if a worse URL, if a URL that's not as strong or not as good comes in and causes that page to go out, and then the average position comes down. Now, cannibalization is if a stronger URL is displaced by a weaker URL. Now, a homepage is generally stronger than an internal category page. But I don't want to get too far into this right now because it's a bit more advanced, but explaining the principle. So cannibalization is the sacrifice of one URL for another, where the URL that's basically getting in the way is not a good URL and therefore is likely to rank lower. And obviously, if it ranks lower, it means lower traffic. But this provides a low-level thesis for why we have a query and lots of pages. Okay, so at some point, these pages have appeared in search, either as a site link or actually appeared as a standalone result. So what you'll also notice as well is that because we only have the filter for data and the query, we can then see data for other countries. So we can see, for example, that nearly all of the clicks came from the UK. But we can see that, some impressions came in other countries. So there were people searching in the US where, bulkco.co.uk actually appeared. But we can see in examples like this is normal. It's very... I don't think there's ever really going to be much of a time where you don't see other countries. So even if you've got an American food blog or a Canadian retail store or a South American casino site, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. Generally, bits of your content are going to appear in other countries. That's natural. It's not anything to worry about. But if the traffic is disproportionate to offering, so for example, let's say I'm a UK wholesaler, and 70% of my clicks come from the US where I don't trade, then that's a bit more concerning, because do I really care about that 70% of clicks that comes from a market that I don't trade in? So one common scenario where this influence might happen would be you run a clothing website or a retail website, and you have a blog. A common source of traffic from wider locations is a blog, because how to choose the best wardrobe this autumn could be something that people care about in Australia, Canada, America, UK. So you might find that your traffic is skewed to these countries if you have a blog. So this data effectively allows you to drill down on it. So that's why you have like data sets with filtering. So for example, if I wanted to, I could remove the query filter and filter by pages to look for traffic for blogs and things like that. And we'll go through that. But fundamentally, not only does this show you the data, but if you click on any of these things, it applies it as a filter. So if I click on that, it's going to apply it as a filter. And remember, you can interact with these filters. So you can add them, you can remove them, you can cancel them. Okay. So what I've now done by clicking a filter, whenever you apply a filter, it's likely to go back and change the data that you see. So think of this as like a big data set that allows you to just interact with multiple filters to really drill down and find out what's going on. So we can see here, for example, if I wanted to filter by URL, I could filter by product category if I wanted to see just what product category traffic looked like. So that's countries, and then we have devices. So we can see we have 3 device platforms: mobile, desktop, and tablet. And again, the benefit here is really understanding, where do most of my users click from and search from. So one thing to keep in mind is whatever data you're looking at, if you've been clicking on things and applying filters, that's going to narrow down the data that you see to the filters. So for example, I can see most of the clicks for bulk buy food in the UK were from mobile. If I remove the UK filter, I can see that the figures have changed, but we're still predominantly mobile. If I remove the query filter, then I'm back to just filtering by date, and Google will give me all of the device data. So we can see here significant change now. And this is another really interesting point to keep in mind is, do you remember how earlier I said impressions is a good indicator of search demand for things? Well, it also can be used to understand, well, where do a majority of people do their searches? So we can see that whilst mobile drove the most clicks, we can see that actually the market for our business is more based on desktop. I mean, there's not a significant gap there, but we can see that impressions are higher on desktop than mobile. So what's really important to understand here is that given that this performs behind mobile, and given that average position here globally is lower, because the demand is higher, this is where actually more of the opportunity exists. So the desktop market for our business is bigger. Okay, and remember CTR, you can see here 2.8%, 0.8. So CTR is basically the calculation of how many clicks to impressions. It's that percentage ratio. So this means that the opportunities for us on desktop are actually much bigger, because more people are searching on desktop and we get less of those clicks. So that is an opportunity. The next thing is search appearance. So, not just using this because this is obviously paid, but search appearance can be, I don't know. So if we did cheap food, so you may have seen it. I mean, you get things like this. So people also ask, search appearance can be, I don't know. Let's see if I can find an example. So this is a AIO, Google AI overview. And we can see here, this is a featured snippet. So inside Search Console, we have search appearance product snippet. So we've had product snippets shown in product listings. So if people have search for specific things, and we've got products, they've appeared in the search results. And again, to reiterate, as I go through doing these educational videos, I'll do smaller consumable videos that will just be like, this is what this is how it works, this is how you get them. So there'll be like lots of micro videos to help you understand each of these things. So don't worry about too much about this now. We'll cover it. But this is like if stuff on your website appears in search results differently to a standard search result. So a standard search result would be, these. So this will be your standard search result. Okay. And features are things that stand out on the page. And, this is a featured snippet, for example. So any clicks that you get from those will generally appear in here. And then we have dates. So this is just basically giving you top level data by date. This is probably the thing that I use the least. It doesn't really matter, but it's good if you're exporting it. You want to do a report on clicks per day or what have you. But generally, this is the one that we tend to use the least. So going back to our query table. So there's a couple of things here. So first of all, what you can do is you can actually apply filters. Okay, so you can click on a filter and then you can say, I don't know, bulk. So if I apply that, it will basically do that. And you can see here 602. I can apply then a position of, I don't know, so anything that's on page 1. So if I do smaller than 10, so we've got 194 queries here. If I now apply that, oh, it's already applied it. So this allows you to just basically like filter the chart by various things. So you can click on something and then it will give you the option to select equals, greater, not greater than, or contains, depending on the type of field that is, whether it's a position or a query. So you have that. You have the ability to change how many things that you see by page. Again, just adds a little bit of functionality there. So it just makes it easier if you want to look at a larger data set at once. These will take you through all of the queries so that you can get to the bottom of the pool. So the next thing is the filtering. So we can click on a filter. So we have the ability here to basically get the data for a specific query, for a specific group of queries, or the ability to compare one set of queries to another. So in this instance, for example, if I put in bulk by, what this will do is it will show me all of the click data and click profile and impressions and CTR for anything with bulk by in it. And if we go down here, we can see that there are 781 bulk by queries, and you can see basically anything that contains bulk by together. Okay, so that's if you're looking to find something that's containing, or maybe you want to get rid of something that's part of a string. So we can get rid of anything that says bulk by. And then you can see here, we can see bulk food, bulk water, bulk shopping. So again, this is just excluding what we don't want. Then we have exact query. So this will just get a specific bit of data for a single query. So in this instance, if I put bulk by food, you'll see it's just narrowed down to one query. And then we have regex. So regex is a little bit more complex. Again, I'll cover this in another video, but regex just basically allows you to use something called regular expression. So it allows you to apply a series of characters that allow you to apply like multiple filters at once. It's good. It's a little bit restrictive. Takes a bit of getting used to. But for example, I could do bulk by and I want to include cheap food. So basically, there are patterns that you can use in regex, and we'll cover that in a separate video. And then you can basically then apply, does it match what the regular expression is, or doesn't it match? So if I click matches regex and I've put bulk buy and cheap food, then it's going to apply that regex. So it will find bulk buy and it will find anything with cheap food in it. Not a great example, but you can use asterisks. You can use different expressions in here to really hone things down. Then you have the ability to compare queries. So, for example, we might want to compare queries containing, I don't know, bulk buy, queries not containing bulk buy. So I'm saying I can compare one set of queries to another, and you don't have to do like for like. You can compare any queries. And what you'll see is you'll see, obviously, the click profile. So you can see how many clicks have bulk buy in them and how many without. So we can see on Monday, the 27th of November, we had 10 clicks with anything, the word bulk buy in it, the phrase bulk buy. And we had 24 clicks for anything without bulk buy in it. So generally, you can't see the table of data because it has different data sets, which they can't show you at once. But you can get an idea of traffic. So one really good use for this would be brand versus non-brand. Another thing that you could do, if you had an e-commerce site, you might want to compare URLs. So if it was Shopify, you could do /collections and versus URLs containing /products. Now we can't apply it to this because this is not on Shopify. But you could compare collections and products to see how much traffic comes to my collection pages, how much traffic comes to my product pages. If we do a compare like that, so I've got no filters, my last 16 months, so I can get an idea. So I can see that we've got product category as a subfolder, and we've got product as a subfolder. So I could compare them. So URLs containing product category and then product. So what I then want to do is see, well, how much traffic comes through my product categories, which are the main thing in the navigation, versus how many people actually go directly to products. And we can see here that product category in the last 16 months has had 23,900 clicks, whereas products has just had 4,330 clicks. So, we know that a lot more traffic comes through our product categories, which is, typically what we have in our menu navigation. And we can see that our product category URLs have appeared significantly more in search than our products have had. So this just allows you to basically compare URLs, compare queries. You can compare specific URLs. You can compare subfolders. So this is really what allows you to run those comparisons. So again, with the filtering, we can apply filters for different things. Now, another thing, and this is really an intrinsic issue here, and I'm going to explain a little bit more about Google and the limitations, and then how we've overcome those limitations. So by now you've got the very fundamentals of the performance tab. Now, there's a couple of things that I should make you aware of. So Google Search Console is a free product. It doesn't cost you any money to use. And whilst that's great, it does have some pitfalls. So there are a few important things to know. So number one is that Google doesn't give you all of the data. So whilst it gives you top level indicative data, doesn't give you access to everything. Okay. I mean, there's a reason for that. So the main reason being that it costs money for them to run and maintain Google Search Console, but also to process the data. So this is a relatively small website, but it's got thousands and thousands of keywords. It's got thousands of pieces of data. Okay, because what you have to remember is every day, every single one day. So if I select a specific day, and this isn't a full day's worth of data, this one day of data, we've got 237 pages. And for that 237 pages, we have to have every query, device, search appearance. The same for queries. Okay, there's over 1,000 queries, and we have to have, for every query, we have to have the click, impression, CTR, position, but we have to have what device that was on, what country it was from. So there's actually tens of thousands of rows of data that they have to store. So what happens with Google is that if they were to give you all of this data, it would become unsustainable for them. It wouldn't be a free product anymore. So Google doesn't give you all of the information, okay? And there are pitfalls to that, but won't worry about that for now. And the other thing is that the UI is pretty basic, but also is the ability to get the data and to filter it. And this is a real problem. So in terms of the data set, so if we go back to last 16 months, and also just before I go into that as well, the compare functionality is also there for date, and this one is actually one that I generally use the most. You can compare time frames. So, you can compare a specific set of time frames. The one that I typically tend to use the most if I'm looking at year-on-year performance is last 3 months year-on-year. And the reason that I do that is because you will always want to compare equivalent timeframes the previous year. I'll give you a scenario of why that's important. Let's say you run an e-commerce website selling clothes. You might find that October, November, December, you have a big increase in traffic because of seasonality. The run up to Christmas, people buy more Christmas presents, shopping. Maybe it's colder, people buy more coats. If you were to then compare that to January, February, March, it wouldn't be a fair comparison because after Christmas, people maybe stop spending, demand drops off, clicks drop off. So it wouldn't be a fair comparison. But if we compare October, November, December last year to this year, we ride the same seasonality curve. So it's a better indicator. But we can see here, year on year, that obviously there's been a decline in clicks, decline in impressions, lower CTR, and a lower average position. Okay. And then when we come down to this table, we can actually sort. So we can see by where we've gained and where we've lost. And generally across here, we can see this table in full. And we can see this data at page level as well. Now, to make it a bit easier to decipher, apply single or dual filters at once. And then we can see here, if we sort, we can see which pages gained and which pages lost. So we can see here which pages lost the most clicks and which pages gained. Now, one other thing that you can glean from this data is that sometimes pages are removed from a website. So if a page was present last year and isn't this year, we're going to have lost those clicks. So how do we know that? Well, one of the things that we can do is we can select clicks and impressions. We can scroll down, and if we see that one of the columns has a 0, all we need to do is look at the adjacent column for impressions. Now we can see that this is a new page. This is a pre-existing page because in 2023, it didn't get any clicks, but it was served in search. This year it got clicks and was served more in search. So what we're looking for is, in order for something to be gone, it should have 0 on at least 2 columns, i.e. clicks or impressions. Because if it didn't have any clicks, didn't have any impressions, wasn't served. So if you had 50 clicks last year, 0 clicks this year, and 0 impressions this year, in all probability that URL is gone or is no longer indexed. So this is a great way to do that. And you can also export this data and what you can do is just follow this video and what I'm doing for yourself. And there's a really easy way to find stuff. So what you do is once you've done your formatting, I always like to make my stuff look better, is select the top row, click data, create a filter, and we can look at pages this year that potentially are gone. So we can apply a filter to this. So filter by condition equal to 0. And then what we can do is for the same year, but on impressions, and we can apply 0 there. Okay, so we can see that, and this is on queries. We would do this on pages. Let me just do this on pages. So if a query has this, what that means is that if there's a 0 on both clicks and impressions, we can see here on average position that is 0. That basically means that last year this was served and generating us traffic last year, but not this year. So we've lost those queries. So if we apply the same thing to pages, and then we're going to select is equal to 0. And then impressions is equal to 0. We can see here that so last year they were served in Google, and even last year they might not have generated clicks, but as long as the page was served, it was there in Google. But the fact is that this year, not only are there no clicks, but there's no impressions. So Google hasn't served these URLs. We can see here there's no average position. So it can mean one or two things. It can mean that the page was removed from the website or that Google no longer indexed it. So you can go to your URL, or you can use a URL checker, and we can see that the URL is still present. So what that means is that Google's dropped these pages from the index. So you can do this in reverse by applying the filter to 2023. So it might be that a URL didn't exist in 2023, but does this year. So that's the date compare period. Now, so if we go back and we select our time frame. So here are some of the limitations and fundamentally why they're an issue. So, for example, amongst the limitation of data is capped at 1,000 rows of data. That's just how Google Search Console is. And I'll show you a counterpart example and why it's a problem. But if we look, so there are a lot of bulk queries, okay? So if I want to drill down and find out what they are, I can apply a filter to my queries. But how do we do it? So for example, I might want to find everything with the word bulk. And as you can see, we've still got more than 1,000 queries. Now, if I want to add another filter to find, I don't know, I don't want anything with the word buy in it. I just want all the bulk queries, but I don't want anything with the word buy in it. So if I now click add filter and I click on query, you'll see it's taken me back to the query that I added as a filter. Google Search Console doesn't allow you to layer filters of the same filters. What I mean by that is you can only apply one query filter at a time. Now, there are nuances to this. So, for example, I might want to find everything that contains bulk, food, cheap. But again, I can't do one thing and the other. I can't say to Google, well, I want everything with the word bulk in it, but I don't want anything with the word buy in it. And it's the same principle for filter. Once you apply a single filter, you cannot apply another filter. Okay, so there are two intrinsic problems here. Number one, we can't access all of the data anyway. And number two, we can't apply multiple filters to drill down. Now, you don't necessarily need to worry about that too much if you're early on in your SEO journey. But as you start to progress and you realize that you need this data, this is when it becomes a problem. So when we look at this, okay, we're looking at, there's over 1,000 bulk queries. If I type bulk buy, there are 781. So as long as there's less than 1,000 rows of data, you can generally access everything. But how much data is really missing? So one of the things that we can do, if you just bear with me, I will pull up some of the examples of how SEOs would typically get around this. Just before I drag it onto the screen, I'm just making sure that it works. Okay. So one of the things that SEOs do typically is they'll use something called an add-on or a connector. So Google Search Console is the interface for all of the data that they give you as sample data. But there's a lot more data. It's just not there. And do you remember what I said earlier about if Google gave everyone all of the data, it's a lot of processing for them. So they have the data, but they just don't give you it. Okay. So what some people do is they go to Google Sheets, they go to extensions, and they go to add-ons, and they click get add-ons, and they search for something called Search Analytics for Sheets. Okay. And they add and install this. Now, I'm not promoting this. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. And what I will say is that whilst I have used this for years, they recently made it freemium. So they give you data, but if you want to get more data, you now have to pay for it, which you never used to. But do you remember I said Google Search Console gives you 1,000 rows of data? Well, this will give you up to 25,000 rows. So what I can do in here, if you see here, this is actually these filters here, just not in the same format. So let's say I want to get all of the queries. How many are there? So if it's already at the max time frame, I've select my site, left all of this as it is, select the maximum amount of rows that I can, and then I click request data. So Google shows me 1,000 rows of data, but how many are there? Let's take a look. So we click request data. And here's our tab. And if we look, oh God, there you go. And we're all the way down. We can see that we've maxed out. So there's more than 25,000 queries of data. But the neat thing here is that this allows you to do the things that you can't do in Search Console. So do you remember I said that I wanted to find all the words that contain bulk, but I don't want any of the words that contain buy? I can do that filtering in here, or not. So fundamentally, one other way is that I can just get part of the data like so. When that data is then here, I can then apply a filter in Google Sheets to filter out. But to be honest, this is like a bit clunky. Do I really want to have to go here and then I have to filter out anything with the word buy in it? Which is, so here I've found all my bulk queries without the word buy. But this is just, it's not really user friendly. And there's no visualization. So, I can't visualize what the traffic looks like. So we have the fundamentals of the fact that we can't layer our filtering. And because we can't layer it, we can't visualize the clicks and impressions that combination might have. And then the other side of it is that we fundamentally have the 1,000 row limit. So one of the things that we've been doing is we basically have rebuilt Google Search Console. So fundamentally, one of the key things is that we rebuilt Search Console, but we took away all of these limitations. So, for example, if we look in here at the last 16 months for Bulk Co, remember in Search Console, we could see only 1,000 rows. So there's the 1,000 rows at the bottom. If we look here, you can see that we can access 26,000 rows of data. And then one of the things that we did was we basically, for all of the limitations, we made it so that you can bypass all of them here. So in here, if I want all of the words with bulk in, I can then apply a second filter to get rid of anything with buy. So what we've done is we've bypassed all of the limitations in Search Console. We've bypassed the fact that you can't layer filters in Search Console. You can here. We've bypassed the fact that you can't access more than 1,000 rows in Search Console, but you can here. We've bypassed even more than that. So one of the other things that's also really important to understand is that Google Search Console only stores 16 months of data. Okay. Now you might think, well, that's more than enough. But actually, in many cases, it's not. Because it's really good to understand what the last 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 4 years looks like. Search Console, every day that goes by, it loses 1 day of old data and gains a new day. So that 16 months is just shifting forwards every day. So as a new day is appended, 1 day is lost. So you can see here in Google Search Console, I can't see back beyond the 29th of June, 2023. But again, we've bypassed these limitations in SEO Stack. So we've got our date filtering, but you'll see here we have something called first data point. So we can store up to 10 years of your Search Console data. So for example, earliest we can see back here was the 29th of June. And in SEO Stack, we can go all the way back to the beginning of February. So every day moving forwards in SEO Stack, we're appending another day's worth of data, whereas whereas Google Search Console was losing it. So these are the basically main things that you need to know on using the page performance. We also have the ability here to export the data as well, so you can export into your usual formats. So this is basically the fundamentals of how to use the performance section in Google Search Console. In the next video, I will be covering URL inspection, and sequential videos will go through all other aspects. There will also be other videos that explain how to look at this data, how to understand it, how to filter and interpret it in more detail. My name is Daniel Foley Carter. Thank you so much for watching this videos. If you do have any questions, please feel free to visit us. Our website is www.assertiveuk.com. If you are interested in the tool that was mentioned, that is www.seo-stack.io. If you do have any questions, feel free to let me know. Have a great day.